So today I've been asked my thoughts on this Andrew Lawrence situation. He made a joke about the horrendous attack in Liverpool. Well, he didn't actually make a joke about it. He said, I think it was something like, if I was stuck in the middle of Liverpool, I'd drive through rows of people to get out. Something like that. Quite a lazy joke. Personally, I didn't find it funny. Didn't think it was needed. But who am I to say? Who am I to say what's funny and what's needed? I'm sure some people laughed for whatever reason. If you if you don't like Liverpool as a city, you would have found it hilarious. What I'd also like to say is to those people injured in Liverpool, and thank God no one was killed, although a couple are seriously injured. Hope you make a full and speedy recovery. What an horrendous attack, and what a cowardly thing to do for whatever reason on a day of celebration with men, women, and children in that crowd. It's horrendous. They ought to throw the book at him, whatever his reasoning. It's untapped. And if he was drugged up to the eyeballs, I don't care. Just stick him in that prison. So yeah, Andrew Lawrence. A few comedy clubs, particularly one in Liverpool that I actually like, and I like the people behind the club, have said that he should be banned, blah, 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 blah. They're not going to book him. I think the Comedy Store in London says they're not going to book him. Not that I think they booked him anyway. But people have said, what do you think? Well, I'll tell you what I think. I'll go back to an altercation I had in 2002, right at the end of 2002. I think it may have been around New Year. I went up and played. I opened at a club called, I think it was the Blue Cat or the Wild Cat. It was in Stockport. And the headliner that night was a guy called Andy White. He may not remember this, I don't know. But I went on, I did my bit, and then as I came off, just before Andy came on, a group of people came in, quite rowdy, obviously no respect for the people in the audience. And apparently it was members of Primal Scream, particularly a guy called Manny. I don't know him. I still don't know the works of Primal Scream. And after that night, I didn't particularly want to look into them. They're probably very good musicians. But Andy White went on and he told a gag about cancer. Now, allegedly, they just got back from Joe Strummer's funeral. Or he just, I don't know if they, some sort of bereavement occasion. And a couple of them, including this man, he took exception to the gag that Andy White had told about cancer. Now, I've lost a couple of people with cancer. I don't find it a particularly funny subject, but if I remember rightly, the gag was quite funny, and I laughed. And I think gallows humour gets you through so much in life. I've been to some horrendous situations as a police officer, and then working on the railway with suicides where people jump in front of 100-mile-an-hour trains, and it's been gallow humours that's got through it. So this particular night in Stockport, this man, he said, I don't find that funny at all. And I said, well, why would you come to a comedy club where nothing should be out of bounds, no subject should be off the table, and be offended? You know, if you're in that mental state of having lost someone, probably a comedy club's not the best place to be. He didn't see things the way I did, and cut a long story short, big melee, and I think the bouncers stepped in and blah, 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 blah. But my thoughts that night when I stood up for Andy White were the same as they are with Andrew Lawrence. I think if it's a joke, and you mean it as a joke, and you say it in all good faith as a joke, then you can't legislate for who takes offence out of it. And I think cancelling someone for that is right out of order. Just my opinion. And the Hot Water Comedy Club, as I say, I've got so much respect for, and I like all the people behind it. I've watched Paul Smith, not actually at that club, but out on tour, talk to a guy who's having cancer treatment, and he got it just right. It was very funny. Even his family was laughing. I think they probably, when you're going through something like that, you probably need a release. It probably done him a massive favour. But it was a very thin dividing line. and some people would have taken offence. I think it's down to the skill of Paul Smith, who I think is a brilliant comedian, to gauge that line. But sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes in comedy I've offended people. I mean, a year after 9/11, I remember clearing out a hall full of Americans. I didn't know there was a hall full of Americans, to be honest, or I probably wouldn't have said the gag. But I made this observation that apparently 73% of Americans said that after 9/11 they would never fly again. So I wondered, how come they're still using buildings? I thought it was a good gag. Some people in that hall were killing themselves laughing. But it was too raw for the Americans, and they got up. Their prerogative. And had I known it would cause that much distress, I probably wouldn't have used that gag on that night. That's just me. There's loads of comedians out there that would have done. So yeah, I don't think anyone should be cancelled for a gag. Did I find it particularly funny? No, not really. Did I think it was said at the wrong moment? For me, yeah, but not for Andrew Lawrence. And no, I don't think he should be cancelled. I think sort of Sam Kinison, Bill Hicks, Richard Pryor, they'd be turning on in their graves listening to comedy clubs, Comedy Store, saying, "Oh, we won't book him." I don't think they booked him anyway. But they'd be turning their graves. But then again, they'd been turning their graves a long, long time ago, wouldn't they? You know, things like COVID, you know, comedians shouting at people for pointing out that Big Pharma were making billions out of it. Not necessarily totally honestly. So that's my thoughts, folks. I personally didn't like the gag. I don't know Andrew Lawrence personally. Do I find him funny more often than not? And should he be able to say that sort of gag on Twitter? Yes, I think so. And I don't think I've ever told a gag that won't offend somebody. And in 2025, a lot of people seem to be able to find something to be offended by. That said, that was an horrific thing that happened in Liverpool. And as I've already said, I just wish everyone involved in that terrible atrocity all the very best. And may you all get well and speedily. Thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts. As long as you've got a few manners and you don't just lay in with a load of abuse because you disagree, I'll listen to anyone. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you so wish, and speak to you soon. Bye for now.